Welcome to the Coach's Table Podcast, where coaches come to grow personally and professionally through real-world application and online education. What is going on, guys? Happy Thursday. First of all, it's a beautiful day outside. But today, man, we have a very interesting guest. His story is pretty unbelievable. And what I think you guys are going to recognize from this is, you know, what it really takes to get to where you want to get to. This guy's story is it's funny. I think you're going to take a step back and be like, man, I just really need to pursue my dreams after this. So it's really interesting. He goes from dropping out of graduate school with 2 classes left due to some mental health reasons. But what he was studying was so fascinating. Then goes to selling pest control door to door, which is extremely fascinating. And now here he is training 200 athletes in 2 hours, essentially as the only coach that's on the floor. So if that interests you at all, man, let me tell you, stay tuned because this is going to be really interesting. But before I introduce him, let's get the administrative stuff out of the way. Guys, if you get anything from this episode, if you find it encouraging, educational, or entertaining, here's what I ask. Give us a like, give us a comment, follow us. We're on Spotify, YouTube. Drop it down there. We'd really, really appreciate that. And most importantly, share it with a friend, somebody that you think would benefit from this. So without further ado, Brandon Pigg, what's going on, man?
What's up, dude? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. How about you?
Pretty good. Can't complain this morning. Don't have the pretty weather you do. It's pretty dreary here, but outside of that.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm looking outside my window right now, and it's sunny. It's still a little chilly, but it's sunny, and it's amazing to see the sun, though. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I'm looking out the window, and it's 37 degrees, and we're on like our 4th day of rain and 8. So.
Ooh, that's brutal. It's crazy because, I mean, so I grew up in Minnesota, right? And the winter is long. It's gray. It's kind of slushy, you know, kind of all that stuff. But like, I love the snow. And this is maybe not my first year without snow on the ground. Probably when I lived in Georgia, we didn't have any snow on the ground, but it's probably like my 2nd year without snow on the ground. And I mean, like, no snow. Like, I'm looking at green grass right now.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to me because I love to snowboard. I just love to be out on the mountain, love to rip it. And there's none around here. I'm just like, bro, I just want to go to the mountain right now. But hey, I think I'll take it. I'll take the sun.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah. So, man, I'm interested, and I think so is everybody else, about your time getting to where you're getting, or to where you're at, from, you know, we were kind of talking before here a little bit, but, you know, tell us about your story. I'm so interested to hear because if anybody listened to the intro, you know what we're going to talk about, but how do you go from, you know, undergraduate school to graduate school to, man, I'm so close to getting a master's to now I'm selling pest control. Now I'm an intern and now I'm doing that. Like, walk us through that.
Yeah. So I guess the story really begins in high school. That's where my research interest came from. Because like I grew up in a household, like my dad was a power lifter. He was pretty good at it. Like I think he held an Alabama state record for a while. He had a 804 squat in comp. So I mean, like I grew up around people So like I grew up around people that loved lifting. He would take me to the gym as a kid. There's a local brand here in the South called Right Equipment. And the guy who owns that company actually gave me like a pair of 1-pound dumbbells when I was born as like a welcoming gift. And yeah. So I mean, like I grew up loving that type of stuff. And in high school, I wound up following this dude on Instagram called Corey Gregory. If you've heard of Muscle Farm supplements or Max Effort Muscle, he's the dude that started both of those. And so Corey, I mean, like, for being real, he's kind of insane. Like, and I remember he started doing this squat.
Though.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to be like super successful. And he started doing this squat every day challenge. And like I said, I grew up in a lifting household. And it's like, oh, you can't do that. You've got to take 48 hours recovery between without training again, or else you're going to lose all your gains. And sure enough, like he does it 150 days straight, and he's hitting like new PRs like once every like 1 or 2 weeks. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. Clearly, I don't know something. And I
Right.
was like, I wonder if it'd be possible to research like how his body's adapted to this to allow him to do it. And that was where that kind of little research seed got planted in my head. Went to Mississippi State. Originally was in civil engineering. Realized that that sounds like an absolutely horribly boring job. You'd just be staring at dirt all day. And I'm like, well, I'd rather do something I'm at least interested in. So swapped over to the kinesiology program. Side point,
Yeah.
the MSU kines program had some all stars back then. Um, John Eric Smith, his PhD dissertation was actually the base formula for G2 Gatorade. And then he was the head sports scientist at Gatorade for, I forgot how many years. He was the one that started the lab in Tampa. So we had a
Wow.
couple, just, yeah, had a couple really great professors to learn from there. And so naturally, like that, like those guys all help play into the research interest. So undergrad, my internship that I had to do, I actually did it with one of the professors there. His name's Dr. Matthew McAllister. I think he's still at Texas State for right now. But he was really big into like the reactive oxidative species type research and seeing like different things like that for like long-term chronic health or chronic diseases and how they play on long-term health. So it was a really cool internship because the first part I got to help his doc student do one of the main studies for his PhD, which was a diet slash performance study on firefighters. And so basically looked at how a low carbohydrate diet impacted anaerobic performance on firefighters. And so got to run like the Moxie VO2 whatever thing, looking at like wind gates and VO2
Yeah.
maxes and stuff like that. So that was cool. Then I got to, he actually let me run my own study, and I was really interested in intermittent fasting at the time. So I got to help come up with like the study design, do all the recruiting myself. Basically, like I couldn't draw blood because I was an undergrad, but outside of that, I had to do pretty much
Sure.
everything. And then he ran all the stats at the end. And so that was cool. I really wanted to keep doing that. So his mentor at Memphis was looking for a new GA. And so that's how I got connected to that. So after I graduated in December. So I took that spring semester off, then went to Memphis that fall.
Sure.
And so the guy I was the GA for, he was the dean of the department, which basically means like he's very hands off. He has a lot of important things to do. And
Sure.
anytime like a supplement company or something reached out and was like, hey, we need this validated through third party testing. Can you do it? That was my job.
Okay.
And so, yeah. Um, so first semester, uh, we were working on just like some kind of basic health supplements, nothing really crazy, which all supplement studies are kind of the same. It's you come in, I'm going to get baseline blood pressure, do a baseline blood
Sure.
draw, give you the supplement, and then we're either going to wait how long and just see what happens to your blood. Like, is it the same? Is it different? What's new? What kind of stuff's
Yep.
going on inside?
Yep.
Or maybe you're doing something like a task and we're evaluating all those metrics plus some type of performance metric. And so that's what
Sure.
happened like my second and third semesters in grad school. I was, you already alluded to this. I call it the fortnight study. Basically, there was a
Yeah. Yeah.
supplement
This is
company. Yeah.
interesting.
So a supplement company reached out and they wanted, basically, they were the supplier for like the main drink associated with esports. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say it or not. So if you know what the main sport drink associated with esports is, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're like me and don't play video games anymore because you're a grown man, except for Pokemon, I still play Pokemon. But
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it kind of goes against the grown man thing. But I had
Yeah.
no idea about any of this stuff. And so basically, they wanted to say like, okay, we're the supplier for all their ingredients. We just want to make our own stuff. And so they wanted to test their supplement versus caffeine only versus a placebo. And so basically, these college students would come in and like, dude, you got the widest range of people that you can imagine for this study. Like
Oh, I can imagine.
I've got the third string quarterback from Memphis sitting in one chair. And then on the other end, I've got a 37-year-old dude who started the esports club and is trying to get like scholarships provided for kids to come play video games in college. Like
Wow. Wow.
entire spectrum.
Huge difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so basically they'd come in, same thing. Like I'd take blood pressure, get a baseline blood draw. And then they would take some like reaction time test on a computer. And then they'd
Okay.
play Fortnite for 2 hours. And basically we repeated that process 3 times. So they were in the lab for a little over 6 hours total, which meant the earliest I would get out is like 10 p.m. And like we were down in the basement, no windows. And like
Yeah.
sitting in a basement watching people play Fortnite for 6 hours a day as your job sucks.
Not, yeah, not fun, especially with no windows. And I
Yes.
mean, if you're not interested in Fortnite either, then you're just like, bro. On top of that, for those guys playing 2 hours, that's like a warm up period for them. For like people that are like serious competitive gamers, which I'm not, dude. Actually, see, here's something funny. When I went to college, um, I remember when I went to college, I was like, I gotta buy an Xbox. I was like,
Yeah.
because I'm gonna play so many video games in college. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who we went to high school together, and she was selling her used Xbox, and I was like, heck yeah. So I bought it from her. Do you know how many times I played that in 4 years? Twice. I
Yeah.
played it twice in 4 years. I turned it on 4 times in 4 years. Played twice, so I played video games twice. 2 other times I used it to watch Netflix, and that was the
Yeah.
extent of my Xbox game. Like I've just never been interested in gaming. When I was younger, I used
Yeah.
to play like Madden and stuff, but like even now, or
Right.
like Call of Duty, which is cool. But like going into college, you're like, yeah, you have the time, so you're just gonna play game. I didn't play video games at all, man. So that was my. I bought an Xbox and used it twice in 4 years. So really good investment if you would think that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so that study was supposed to last 3 months and there's supposed to be several people helping me. But then everybody realized
Mm-hmm.
how much that study sucks and they realized that they didn't want to do it. So I was like, well, that can just be your kind of graduate project. And so it turned into like, okay, I'm supposed to have like 2 full-time position people helping me, and we're supposed to be hiring 2 more graduate assistants to helping me to, okay, you're going to do it. And this one guy's wife needs a part-time job, so she's going to help you. And so it's
Okay.
just like, cool. So a year later, we're still trucking on that study, and I'm just
Whoa.
fed up. And I'm like, this sucks.
Oof.
Like, I'm tired of getting home at like 11:30 to midnight and then having to be back for a
Yep.
pointless meeting at 7:30 in the morning. Like,
Oh.
this is terrible. And
Yep.
I eventually reached that point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to finish out the semester and then I'm done. And a
Okay.
lot of people thought I was kind of crazy because it's like, dude, you've got 2 classes and your thesis left and you have a master's degree. And I'm like, okay, but my mental health has absolutely tanked. I have no joy in life. Like,
Mm.
it's completely destroyed any ounce of creativity, any desire to just enjoy life that I have. It's affecting
Yeah.
my relationship. Like my girlfriend's already 3.5 hours away back home. So being long distance
Mm.
plus just me hating life, she comes to visit me. I want to go to bed whenever I'm not in the lab. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm done. Um, Also, like, I was absolutely grinding like crazy on DoorDash when I wasn't there because,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, rent in Memphis is not cheap, and
No, for sure.
graduate assistant stipends are not high.
Yeah.
So put those two together, and like I'm just grinding on DoorDash, trying to make as much money as I can to keep my head above water.
Did you
And
do well on that?
once I dropped out of grad school, I was actually making like 2K to 2,500 a month off of it.
Wow, that's pretty good. Were you
Yeah.
working just like all the time though? I mean, yeah.
I was
You
probably
you got to go to
working
club
like
like all the time for that, right?
I mean, to be fair, part of that was also like during the COVID quarantine era, which just absolutely banged for
Okay.
DoorDash because people didn't really want to go out anyway.
Yeah. Sure, sure,
So
sure, sure.
like during that time, I could work like 4 hours a day and still bring in like 2K. So it was really nice.
In a day or
Yeah.
in the month? Like
Oh, in the
work
month.
4 hours a
Yeah.
day every. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
but I
Okay,
pretty
so
much
then
averaged it
you.
out to where I was doing like 30 hours a week.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 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 yeah. So almost a full time job essentially. But
Right.
okay, so then crush DoorDash. You're no longer in graduate
Mhm.
school, and then you start selling pest control door to
Yeah,
door.
one of the
Now,
he
for
was
for
also a
those of you,
GA. Oh, go ahead.
okay, no, yeah, for those of you for those of you who've never sold anything door to door or have never been in a sales position, it's extremely challenging in more ways than you can imagine. Um, you really meet people that are very rude and will just kind of extremely mean to you for really no reason. Now granted, you might be in slight inconvenience to them because you're knocking on their door, you're picking up the phone and calling, but a lot of them will tweak out on you. And you're just like, all right, cool. And then what that teaches you though is like crazy amount of resilience, right? You got some dude that like tweaks out on you and says like how much of a bad person you are and yada yada yada, and then you go walk down the street, pick up the phone again, whatever it is, go knock on that door and be like, I know you need this pest control, right? Like the 10 seconds of time that you get to regroup to potentially, get the door slammed in your face again or somebody yell at you again, and then 10 seconds again. Like if you've never done it, do it because it's extremely, you will learn a lot about yourself in a very, very, very short period of time. So how does that work? How do you then start selling pest control?
Yeah, so I was a GA in the physiology department. One of the GAs in the biomechanics department had actually done it the 2 summers, like the summer before our first semester and the summer before our second year. And so like he knew that I was like active on social media, that I was interested because like I was learning about like the stock market and all that type stuff during like COVID, like everyone else
Yeah.
did. And so he knew that I was at least interested in making money, and I, I'm not really an extrovert, but I'm comfortable putting myself out on social media.
Sure.
And so he just kind of reached out to me. He kind of told me his story. And he's like, yeah, dude, like I made 35K my first summer doing this. I made 40K my second summer. And so I'm like, dang,
Wow.
like that could,
Wow.
I mean, that could change everything, you know? Like I do that, then I
Yeah.
can just like pay for my last semester of grad school out of pocket, not have to worry about like being a stupid Fortnite assistant. And then like I can
Yeah.
afford like a ring for my girlfriend. We can get engaged, put a down payment on a
Yeah.
house. Like that's a game changer.
40K is a
And
lot. Yeah.
it is. The unfortunate part is I didn't realize that I was being told all this by a salesman. I still viewed him as a grad. Yeah, like I've still like in my
Yeah.
head, like this is
Yeah.
this is the GA from across the hall that I have exercise physiology class with. In
Yeah. He's a
reality,
good
he's a
dude, man.
salesman, and he's a good salesman. Like that.
Yeah.
Like that's the
Yeah.
bad thing is like
Yeah.
he didn't suck. He
That's
wasn't bad
funny.
at sales.
He's
And
selling you the vision. He's selling you the vision,
yes,
and you're
100%. I
like,
got sold.
dude, 40K, and you're like thinking like what 40K could do for you, right? And
Yeah.
you're realizing like this is my only option, like this is all that and
Yes.
you're like, he's selling you the vision, and you're like, yeah, but he's just a good dude. He's the GA from right there, and you're like,
Right.
no, he's a salesman.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Ironically, he actually
Okay,
he had a great job offer working in a biomechanics lab, and he actually wound up going full time sales. So legitimately is a salesman. But
okay, cool. Look at
yeah.
that then. Yeah,
So like he was in charge of training me and everything. Door to door is like kind of like a pyramid scheme slash multi level marketing, whichever term you prefer, where it's
okay,
like
and
once you become like a manager, everyone you recruit, and if you're like managing a team, everyone within your team, you get a percentage of their like total revenue.
sure,
So it's like it kind of forms that triangle pyramid shape. And so he wasn't paid to train me each week. He was basically just banking on I would do a good job, and then he would get like the better I do, the higher percentage of my revenue he gets.
sure,
And so like we were in Memphis at the time, and the door to door job was in Cleveland, Ohio. I also didn't understand that that meant basically everywhere within an hour and a half radius of Cleveland, Ohio. I thought I would just be like in Cleveland every day. No, there are going to be some days where we have to drive an hour and a half because you don't drive yourself. If you drive yourself, then you could go home. You carpool with the other door to door salesman. That way you have to stay out there until 9 o'clock at night when someone comes to pick you up.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was also one thing I wasn't prepared for. Like, I figured it'd be kind of like fairly normal hours. No. In the mornings you have meetings and then you go eat lunch real quick. Then you hop in your carpool ride and you go hit the doors. And so you're on the doors from about 12:30 in the afternoon until 9 o'clock at night. And
Sure, when everybody's home.
yeah, that's it makes a lot of sense once you think about it. But man, you feel like such an a-hole knocking on somebody's door at 8:59 at night.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
and that was so hard for me. So half the time I would just like, once it got to like 8 or 8:15, I'd just go sit on a curb and just play on my iPad until it was time to get picked up.
Sure.
And so my first day as a door-to-door salesman, that'll probably be all I tell you about that. But this one will, the people watching on YouTube will get a little bit of a show here. Within my first 3 hours, I get this one dude. Like I noticed a little sign in his yard. It said like chemicals applied. And so I knew like, okay, this guy's at least open to paying for a professional to come and do work at his house.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, potential lead here. Knock on the door. And like, I'm not finna tell anybody what to wear in their own home. I'm just showed up to your house unannounced. But like, Buddy's probably like 275, 300 pounds. He's in his boxers. And I've got to sit here and try to sell this man pest control and look him in the eye while his nipples are looking me in the eye. And so at first, like, he's locked in. He's like, yo, like, this sounds great. And then finally he's like, wait, this is pest control? I thought you were selling lawn care. I was like, nah, I'm selling pest control. And so this man, see if I can adjust my camera here for the YouTube viewers. He takes both of his hands, cups his man boobs, shakes them up and down at me. He says, look, man, shakes them again. Do I look like I give a damn about pest control? And I was like, no, sir, you do not. You have a great rest of your day.
What?
Yeah. And so head over to the next street and have a great conversation with some people, but they're literally like pulling out of their driveway to go to their son's baseball game. So like I'm walking with them as they're pulling out of the driveway and it's going great. Yes, of course. Like it's my first day. I got to get that first sale.
That's right.
And so like, they're like, dude, seriously, just come back tonight. Like once we're done. And I was like, all right, bet, I'll see y'all. And so I start walking down the street and like their neighbor across the road, he is out there with his push mower mowing his yard. And like, he like motions to me and he comes over. He's like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, hey, do you know the so-and-so's next door? Because his next door neighbor was literally one of our customers. Sure. He's like, I didn't ask about them. I asked what you were doing. I was like, yeah, the reason I brought them up is because we do the pest control for them. Our truck's going to be out here tomorrow to do their job. Basically, my job is to fill the routes in his schedule because it's more cost effective for us to keep the truck in the same area instead of having him drive all over. And he said, excuse me? And I go right back into it. And he said, get out of my neighborhood. I was like, yeah, so the reason I'm here, because I'm just ignoring, dude.
Yeah.
And like, he like grabs his push mower and like cranks the blades back up and takes like a power step at me. And he's like, I said, get out of my neighborhood. And so I'm like, okay, cool. And so I'm like, I'll just walk to a street where dude can't see me. And so keep going about my business, knocking a couple doors. I get to like, I don't know, probably the 7th, 8th house on that street. And I see a kid outside. He's got a Nerf gun. And he's got like this cool little like blind setup where he can like, he's got like a bipod for his Nerf rifle. He's shooting at targets and stuff. I'm like, yo, that's cool. I would have loved that when I was a kid. And It's like that was the next house I was supposed to knock to. So I was like, "What's up, buddy? Your parents home?" And which like also made me feel like I'm some kind of child abductor. But
Yikes.
and like
Yikes.
so this kid just looks at me and he's just got this dead blank stare. He's like, "Mommy's dead and daddy's gone." And I'm just and I'm like, "Huh?"
What?
and and I was like, "Okay, sorry. Um hope everything's all right." And so I just go and I
Get
just
out
sit
of here.
down and I just hold my head in my hands. I'm like, "Bro, what have I gotten myself into?" And like the next day,
No.
I'm still in that neighborhood, and I see this kid's grandparents like loading up boxes and putting them into their car, and he's in the front seat, and I'm like, because like I try to console myself. I'm like, yo, like Cleveland gets hit pretty often, door to door salesmen. They just train their kid like,
Yep.
hey, if you see a guy come up with an iPad, tell him we're dead.
D-
No, they were dead, and like I'm like, okay, so that just kind of rocked me. But yeah, like all that happened within my first 3 hours of actually being a
Holy cow.
true door to door salesman. Yeah.
Okay, so that's that's absolutely insane. You go from one dude um that's just in his boxers, you know, and then you go from another guy that power steps you with a mower, and then a kid that says his parents are dead. I mean, that's that's day one, 3 hours in on the job, man. Like that's not even. Hey, I've been doing this for 10 years, and here's kind of what I've seen over the time. So, um, that's encouraging, but yet very discouraging because, let's just for a second though. Okay, so for a second though, let's do it this way. If that was 3 hours on the job, day one, how many people stop, let alone in today's world, when somebody doesn't like what you put out, somebody says something negative to you, you get one bad comment, you get two people that say you should stop what you're doing, whatever the case may be. How many people stop and they just like hyper fixate on those opinions? I mean, you had a dude literally say, "Get out of my neighborhood," and charge you with a mower. A young kid that said his parents were dead, and then you're like, okay, well, I guess I got to come back here tomorrow and try this all over again, right? Like, it's so crazy to me
Yeah.
to see, how I'm gonna say how soft we are, but like, man, this is why it's the powers of like being a salesperson or at least experiencing that, because most people would never come back the next day. They'd be like, "I'm out, bro. Like,
Right.
I'm done. See you later," Um, but then in today's world, if somebody says something bad, you're gonna be like, "Oh, Johnny hurt my feelings because he said I suck." It's like, well, it could get better, like
Yeah. Right.
it's so crazy to see the contrast.
Yeah. Yeah. That it's funny you bring that up because like I didn't even make that connection, but yeah, like when someone comments on like one of my tweets or a TikTok or something, like, "Yo, you suck."
Yeah,
It's like, bro, I'm like, do you know what I've seen?
cool.
Like, I do not care.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. You're like, sweet,
Keep
sweet. Thanks,
scrolling,
man.
bud.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. But I mean, so you've built a good following. Okay, for those of you that don't follow Brandon, you should. But you've built a good following that you know very well respected in the industry. And then you put out really good information consistently, and I think that's something that because you do put out good information consistently, you do get some of the negative components to that, obviously.
Yeah. Like if you don't want
Um,
negative like comments and stuff, just don't tweet. If you don't say anything, nobody's ever going to say anything about you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. But I think there's something to be said about being in the arena and actually doing it and putting it out there and then having conversation. And a lot of times, like, it's so funny when somebody does say something negative, if you actually like ask them like what's wrong or like, hey, like, why are you having a bad day or whatever the case may be, a lot of times it's like it's because they are having a bad day and they don't know
Yes.
any other outlet besides telling you how bad you are. And you're just like, okay,
Yes.
well, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe you should internalize what you're thinking about here first before you try and bring somebody else down.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
so pest
exactly what
control
happened.
didn't work out. Pest control didn't work out, and then you go and you're an intern, right?
Yeah.
In the sports performance world at a high school. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So basically, I had to figure out what to do for the rest of the summer because I lasted a month on the doors. Absolutely sucked at it. Made like 12 sales in a month. Bank account dried up, and I was like, yeah, I need to just go home and just do DoorDash again. They're like, that's cool, but you still owe us for rent for the rest of the summer because we booked this room for you in the hotel. And I was like, okay, so I guess I'm gonna stay. And uh, I was like, can I just do the actual pest control jobs? Like, sure. And like, you can be like our personal tech, and like that way you can still hang out with us, and you'll just do the jobs that we sell. I was like, okay,
Sure.
cool. And
Yeah.
turns out you could actually sell like upsells and stuff from that. I was
Yeah.
fantastic at it. Like I think at the highest I was ranked like third in the company out of like over 450 technicians at
Oh
selling
wow.
upsells. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Like rodent baiting, man, I slung rodent baiting. They called me the
Yeah.
rat king.
Yeah.
And so like that was how I built up enough money to be able to afford to be an intern. Because
Sure.
like that's the thing is like that's a big prerequisite to being an intern is you have to be able to afford to not get paid.
Yeah. For 5 to 6 months at a time.
Yeah. And like so I was applying to a few different internships and like I had some options, but the issue was like they were all in really expensive places. And I was like, yo, all
Yeah, I get
my
that.
all my rodent baiting money is finna be gone in like 3 weeks if I'm living in a
Yeah.
place with $3,000 a month or rent. And
Whoa.
so but like at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, me and my girlfriend have been long distance throughout all this. Like our 4 year anniversary is coming up here in like what is today? The second, 13 days. So like that also matters to me. And I'm like, I'm tired of living so many hours away from her. And
Mm.
like it was so
Mm.
weird because like the entire summer I just felt something like tugging at me, being like, yo, DM Cody Hughes, see if you can work with him.
Sure.
Because like Cody, he works at Madison Academy, Huntsville, Alabama. My girlfriend's house is like 25 minutes from there.
Mm.
So, and then like also my parents live just over an hour away from there. So I'm like, okay,
Sure.
like I can live with my girlfriend and my parents and like not have to pay rent. That makes it a lot easier to be an unpaid intern. I get to see my
Yep.
girlfriend all the time. We haven't done that in 2.5 years at this point. That'll be great.
Sure.
And so go work with Cody. It was great. Like he told me straight, like I shot him a DM. We were on the phone 15 minutes later. He's like, dude, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a one man show. I do not have time to babysit you. When you come here, I'm gonna treat you like a coach, not an intern. If you suck, I'm gonna ask you to leave.
Yep.
And it's like,
Simple.
cool. And I mean, like, I'd been training people like one on one on the side for years. I'd just never actually gotten into the group setting and gotten to coach like at a school. And
Right. Right.
so, like, the knowledge base was all there. You know, I was 2 classes away from having a master's. Collected data on myself like a madman because I'm still convinced I'm going to be able to run fast and jump high someday. And like, but like, I just needed like a team setting to apply all those things.
Yeah.
And so things went really well there. I got put in charge of the middle school program, and first semester, Cody was still in charge of programming for it, but I would get to run the girls' sessions. And then things went well, and so Cody kind of went to bat for me, and he fought to get me brought back on a stipend position for another
Sure.
semester. And so that semester, all those same responsibilities, but now I also get to program for the girls in addition to running their sessions. And then I
Sure.
was naturally an assistant to him and everything else. So that was fantastic. I mean, Cody was great. He did a great job helping me learn. He did a great job of giving me autonomy and allowing me to make mistakes. He never micromanaged me.
Yep.
Like if there was something he disagreed with, he would ask why. And as long as I had
Right.
a good answer for it, he was like, okay, cool. And he's like, keep doing
Cool.
it. I want to
Cool.
see what happens. And which was, I mean, it worked out really well for both of us because we both took things from each other that we learned from and adapted that changed both of our philosophies, which was awesome.
Right. Right.
Um, then that spring, like it was kind of a question, like, am I going to get to come back here as a full time assistant? And like I'm getting offers from like other schools, and so
Sure.
wound up going to where I'm at right now, which is Priceville High School. And so they brought me on to be their head strength conditioning coach. Me and the assistant principal both kind of had the same vision on that. He was like, I don't want your title to be strength conditioning coach because I don't want people to just think that you're here to just make us get better at the three main lifts and run kids. I was like, phenomenal. I don't want people to think that either. And so we settled on director of physical preparation, which is a title I
Okay.
like a lot. I think it does a good job of
Yeah.
encompassing what we do. And so
Yeah.
that's how I wound up where I'm at right now. I've talked forever, so I'm gonna let you step in.
No, you're good, man. I'm always super fascinated by people and kind of um, how they got to where they're at, right? So that's really interesting, and the life lessons that I've learned throughout that process. And first of all, I think Cody's a great individual, great coach, puts out great stuff, both from a training standpoint, from a resource standpoint. So if you guys don't follow him, I would highly, 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 highly recommend it. And if you've never had a conversation
100%.
with him, I'd highly recommend having a conversation with him as well. Seems to be a really, 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 really good dude, and you said that, so
Yes.
that's awesome. Okay, so now you're at a high school and you're the director of physical preparation, which is awesome. And this is where things get really interesting for those of you in the sports performance world, because we all love to have a good ratio of coach to athlete. You know, if we could have smaller groups, we would, in all honesty, right? If we could
Yeah.
have smaller groups, we would. Obviously more one-on-one attention. I can individualize things, but unfortunately, that's not your situation. Your situation is, and folks, I want you to hear this, is he's training 200 athletes in 2 hours. Okay. All the sports that are coming in the high school world for him are in a 2 hour time period. And it's about 200 athletes, maybe 160 on one day and 200 on the other day, but roughly 200 athletes in 2 hours. So if you don't know how to program at all for one team, let alone good luck trying to program for 5, 7, 10, 15 teams that all have varying degrees of experience in training, let alone you're the only coach. And oh, by the way, there's 200 of them. So talk to us about that. How does each day work? How do you program? How do you, ensure that a senior is getting something different than, a freshman? Do you do that? What does that look like? That's just so mind blowing to me. In all honesty, like that's absolutely mind blowing to me.
Yeah. So the summer was really easy. Basically, what we would do is we would train 4 hours a day, 3 days a week. And so the guys had the first 2 hours, girls had the second 2 hours. And so what we'd do is we would come in, kind of varsity level guys. They would start out outside and they would do all their speed and agility work out there. Then they would come in and lift afterwards.
Yep.
Obviously, the ideal setup is you sprint agility first, lift afterwards.
Yep.
I don't get the chance to do that all the time. So
Sure.
the JV guys that are in like the ninth grade and can't really create enough output to be fatigued from lifting anyway, they're going to come in and they're going to lift first. And in that second hour, they're going to flip and they're going to go outside and sprint, agility, whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And then same setup for girls, varsity girls, sprint first, lift second, JV girls, opposite. That was super simple. All the coaches were there. It was great. Um, like a lot of the things we do don't need, like you don't need a master's degree to stand there and
Sure.
call out times from the dasher and write it down on a
Yeah.
clipboard.
Yeah.
Would I have liked to
I
be
don't,
there to say what?
go ahead. No, go ahead.
But would I have liked to be out there to coach like the game speed stuff from Tony Villani and XPE? Yes. Would I love to coach our wide base crossovers, our brace plant separates, all the other different things like that, coming from different angles, working on deceleration? 100%. That's the stuff that I think actually translates to the game. So that's the stuff that I would prefer to
Yeah.
coach the most. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't coach the lifts like the bigger, faster, stronger program they were used to doing wants them done. So I needed to be in the weight room. I needed to establish the weight room culture and how we're going to do things in there. So I kind of had to take a step back and be like, okay, I'm not going to get to coach the speed and agility stuff all summer. With our girls programs, the numbers actually worked out to where we could get everyone in the weight room at one time. So for kind
That's
of the
nice.
second half of the summer, I actually got to coach everything with the girls and then flip, just do the weight room with the guys. So that was nice.
Right.
Um, then we get to the semester. That's where things got interesting
Yeah.
because no one had thought that far. Like they got to the point where like, we want a strength conditioning coach. We're tired of doing this ourselves. We're going to bring somebody in. No one thought, how's this going to work? And, but like,
Yeah.
that's my job. I'm the guy. And so basically, I figured out a schedule that allows us to train everybody and got all of our in-season teams except for cross country in during seventh period, which was great.
Pretty solid.
Um, Fall semester is very easy. Football, volleyball, only two in-season sports. Everybody else is off-season, except for cross country. But like I said, just the way the numbers worked out, it wasn't possible to get them in the seventh period time slot.
Yeah.
And so basically what we would do is football, they had 60 people on the team, so they maxed out our weight room capacity. They have to be by themselves. So they were their own training group. But then volleyball, men's basketball, and women's basketball, the numbers actually worked out to where those three teams together was slightly less than football's total numbers. So those three got to be a group. I know some people get really weird about like mixed gender training sessions. I don't have the luxury of being able to care about that. The logistics don't allow for it.
Sure.
Yeah, and so basically,
so go ahead.
But yeah, schedule, all it was is on Monday, you were either assigned to the weight room or you were assigned to the basketball gym to do our kind of speed jump, change of direction type day. And so basically you just flip back and forth. And so if football is in the weight room on Monday, basketball and volleyball is in the basketball gymnasium, then Tuesday they're going to flip. Football is in the basketball gymnasium. The other three are in the weight room. And then after school, that's where we can get baseball, softball, track, cross country, soccer. And so many of those people are multi-sport athletes that most of them are already in that seventh period group. So those numbers are actually kind of small.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting, like thinking about that, looking at that, understanding that, seeing that, because it's just like, that is crazy if you ask me. There is so much happening there on an everyday basis, from the standpoint of the multitude of teams, the resources, the time constraints that's occurring. That makes it got to be extremely difficult to program. How do you do that? What does that look like? Obviously, I can't imagine you're going like quote unquote sports specific or individualizing plans for groups, just because of the fact that you probably don't have the time, the resources, nor unfortunately do you have the ability to like have 30 athletes at one time, where you can like hyper focus on them. So how does that look for you?
Yeah. So as far as sport specificity goes, basically everybody's going to have the same meat and potatoes. Your sport gets its own sauce. And so as I kind of hinted to, 70% of our athletes are multi-sport athletes. So like I mentioned, football and volleyball were my two in-season teams in the fall. 12 of those 60 don't play another sport. 6 of the volleyball girls don't play another sport. It makes no sense to train 60 football guys to be a football player year-round when 48 of them are going to play another sport. I have to train you to be an athlete, not a sport player. Like, you're not a football athlete. You're not, because like if I only trained you to be a football athlete, guess what? Football season ends. The first varsity basketball game was 3 days after the last football game in the playoffs. That's a 3-day break between your sports. Do you think in 3 days I'm going to be able to transform you from a football player to a basketball player? No.
Yeah,
you're going to train you're going to train as a Priceville athlete year round.
Yep.
And so when I talked about the sauce, like, yes, soccer, our big issues are going to be things like ankle, knee, hip, concussion. So we're going to have some accessory work that attacks those. Baseball, we're not, I'm not necessarily worried about having as resilient ankles and being as resilient against concussions in baseball as I am soccer. So some of those accessories are going to get changed out, but it's like, what sport benefits from a reverse lunge? All of them. Yeah. Like, there's not a football specific reverse lunge, basketball specific reverse lunge. Like, it's a reverse lunge. As far as skill level goes, I'm a big fan of not out kicking your coverage. So we're going to pick lifts that everybody can benefit from. If you are a senior, you can put 365 pounds on the Zercher box squat and benefit from it. If you are a freshman, you can put 135 pounds on the Zercher box squat and benefit from it.
Right.
And so like the skill level is what actually, like, it's not like we're like, oh, you're ready for this lift now. No, because then I've got a whiteboard. Like, I'm not going to write 17 different programs on the whiteboard and hope you look at the right one to see what to do.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah, and don't get confused.
because it's hard enough for me to explain, like, okay, you guys are going to do this for your ankle. You guys are doing an iso shoulder complex and dead hangs. Because there's a lot of monkey see, monkey do in the weight room. Like,
Yep.
there'll be kids where you're on tier B, the rack beside you's on tier C. You don't know what the superset is on tier B. So you look at the rack beside you to see what to do. And it's like, okay, you're supposed to be doing a Zercher reverse lunge, but you're doing a landmine row because you looked at the rack beside you to see what you're supposed to be doing. And it's so like,
yeah.
and I'm not by myself. Like, there's pretty much always at least one other sport coach with me in there, but I am the only strength conditioning coach.
Yeah,
So
which makes a huge difference, right? I mean,
right.
It's it's amazing to have the coaches in there, and it's amazing to have their eyes and they can see their athletes and stuff as well. But the difference in regards of the love for the profession, the love for executing the task with great confidence, with the intent that we would prefer them to do. Unfortunately, and I love my sport coaches just as much as the next person, but unfortunately, they're concerned about other things, which is fair, and I respect that. So, that's the reason why they're coaching a sport, and we're training athletes to be stronger, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's great to have them in there.
No.
They just may not give it the attention that you would give it because their profession is different than yours, and that's okay. Very interesting, actually. So, one thing I'm very curious on is, okay, you have all this going on. You have hundreds of athletes in a very short period of time. How do you simplify the weight room? How do you, we talk about it kind of a lot, but I mean, and maybe you've touched on it here a little bit, but how do you simplify that? How do you say, okay, everybody's doing this, or how do I get the flow of these athletes through in this period of time? Because it's absurd to me, but what are your tips, tricks, ideas, thought processes on simplifying the weight room?
So number one, pick things that your athletes can execute at a high level. And they're going to be things that one or two people at a time need coaching on, not the entire room needs coaching on. If you've got 60 people in a room and you're the only person who's devoted their life to knowing how to correct what they're doing, and all 60 of them need to be coached, it sucks. You're not going to get anything done. I don't care if you think that lift is better than the lifts we do. If all of them are doing it kind of wrong, they're probably not getting anything out of it.
Yeah.
So I pick things that can be executed at a high level, regardless of if you're a freshman or a senior. So basically the way our thing flows, and like, I'm going to refer to them as tiers. Yes, I understand it doesn't fit Joe Ken's tier system template 100%. We're just going to use tiers, just an understanding of like, okay, we're doing this first, this next. So tier A is always going to start with, you can call it collisions, you can call it eccentric rate of force development, you can call it proprioception, sensory motor integration. I don't really care. Basically, you're doing something where you have to be able to stop something really fast. So, a few of the different things that look like that, we call them partner altitude drops. One thing I picked up from Cody is picking exercise names where the kids are like, oh, that's what I should be doing.
Yes.
And so like partner altitude drops tells me like, okay, it's not just an altitude drop. There needs to be someone doing this with me. And so basically you're going to be standing on top of the bench. You're going to be in A position. If you don't know what A position is, think of that as like the top of your A skip, where you're kind of holding that sprinter pose. So you're in sprinter pose on top of a bench. Your partner is behind you straddling the bench, and they're going to take their hands and they're either going to push you to the left or push you to the right. You don't know which one's coming. And then from there, it's just an altitude drop. We want to land and stick it in like a quarter squat. And so things like that, we'll have, I don't do this with all of them. I don't do it with my baseball people just because I'm kind of, I guess you could call it soft, but I'm a little bit more precautious when it comes to their wrist and elbows. So I don't do
Sure,
push-up altitude
sure.
drops with them. I think because it's one of those things like, yes, I do think having that eccentric rate of force development in the push pattern is a good idea to build in a baseball player.
Yep.
But
Yeah, 100%.
does the risk of screwing up a baseball player's wrist outweigh the reward of that adaptation? Probably not.
Right, right.
Football off season, it's like if your wrist is sore for a couple weeks, I don't really care. You don't play again for
Yep.
another 8 months.
Yeah. That's
So
what I think too. That's what I think when I train my athletes too. It's like, okay, in season, I wouldn't say I'm very cautious. I mean, we're gonna get after it, but
yeah,
I put more stock in you being fresh and ready to perform. Whereas in the off
yes,
season, hey, look, if you're feeling down for a couple of days or a week, like I don't really care. Like
yeah,
you'll be all right. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Theirs
100%.
is yeah. I mean, I'm by don't let the West Side beanie fool you. I'm by no means a meathead. But like football off season is some dirty work right now. I'm not gonna lie, like it
Yeah,
is tough. But
yeah,
I mean,
and
it's
it
not
should be though,
stupid.
right? Because that's
Yeah,
yeah, it's just what the off season should be though, right? It's gritty, it's grindy, it's the days you look back and you're like, remember when we did that? I mean, not in a dumb way, not in a, oh, we're getting somebody hurt. Like, absolutely not. Like, it's smart. It's just tough. It's good,
right.
tough training, where you're just like,
Yes.
that was brutal. So, what is one thing, and I'm always so curious about this. What is one thing, looking back, or even I'm going to say future forecasting, right? What's one thing you believe now that maybe 5 years ago, or one thing that like you don't believe now, excuse me, that maybe 5 years ago you believed, or 3 years ago that you believed? And then what's one thing that you believe now that in the future, and maybe you don't know if you're going to believe that in the future?
Yeah. I mean, as for your second question, we'll say everything I do falls in that
Yeah,
category.
for real.
Um, like if if I've got a hammer right now and I
Yeah,
find a drill 2 years from now, guess what, dude? I'm gonna start using the drill.
right.
Like so, I mean, there are no sacred cows. Like everything is subject to removal and being upgraded. I have no
100%.
emotional attachments. Like if you know me, you know that one of the things I really enjoy are isometrics. I've slightly changed
Yeah,
up how we do them. But like people were like, there was a bunch of people talking about how ISOs suck on Twitter the other day. I don't care.
I saw that.
Like that's an exercise, dude. Like
Yeah.
it's a method of training. Like you didn't attack me.
It's,
You didn't attack
it's
my
eight.
family. You didn't attack my girlfriend. You didn't kick
Yeah.
my dog. You didn't kill my chickens. You
Yeah.
you said you don't like ISOs. Cool. Don't do
Cool.
them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
First of all, don't
But
ever
as
kick
far as
my dog or my chickens.
right,
Y- You know?
um,
Yeah.
some of the dogs, I'd be okay with some of the dogs. Chickens, don't mess with my chickens though. But
Yeah, don't mess with my chickens. The eggs are too expensive right now. So,
right,
um,
that's precious
I tell you
cargo.
what, yeah, man, for you guys that don't know, he has chickens. He gets eggs every single day. It's actually really cool to see. Um, but he's saving so much money doing it too. So talk to us about that. I'm very curious. Answer the first question. So what did you believe
Yeah.
a couple years ago that you thought was great and that you don't believe now? And then what about these chickens, man?
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk about chickens in a second. So the biggest thing that I've kind of changed up on was 5 years ago. I was convinced that if I just found the magic pill, the magic combination in the weight room, I would get back to being able to dunk again like I could when I was 15, and I would be fast again.
Yeah.
And like I was putting all, talking chickens, I was putting all of my eggs in this basket of like,
Yeah.
okay, like, I mean, like I went through everything. Like, yes, I did some West Side stuff and it was
Yep.
cool. Like I could deadlift 3 times my body weight. I mean, it was sumo, so some people say that's cheating, but like, who
Yeah,
cares?
that's
3 times your
cheating.
body weight's 3 times your body weight.
That's pretty
And
insane. 3 times body weight.
yeah, destroyed my back after that. So that ended my straight bar deadlifting career. But
Well, there you go.
um, yeah, but like it's crazy. Like and like I mean, dude, I ran Smolov juniors. Like I did
Mhm.
everything to try and figure out
Mhm.
what I needed to do in the weight room to be fast and to jump high. Because it's like, but like it finally clicked in grad school. Because it's like, okay, when I was a 155 pound, still kind of flirting with cross country, but also starting to train with football in the off season athlete, I could squat like 275. I could deadlift, I don't know, probably about the same. And I could bench like 175. Weighed 155 pounds. I'm 5'9". But I did get to the point where I could dunk, and I did it twice. And then I hyperextended my knee and never did it again. But like, I still, like, I dunked. And there are not a lot of
Yeah.
5'9" people that can say that. I can. I did it.
Yeah.
But guess what? So like we take this like puny little cross country athlete that's not strong, but he's getting the ball through the rim. Then we fast forward 4 years, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm 170 pounds. I'm deadlifting 3 times my body weight. I'm squatting 425. I'm benching 265. I can't touch rim,
Mhm.
and it's
Yeah.
like, and so like I keep just beating my head into the wall of like, there's got to be a better lift. Maybe I just get like, maybe I need to get 4 times my body weight in deadlift. I don't
For
know.
sure. Yeah.
And so like I'm just convinced like there's got to be some way to do it. And like finally in grad school, I just started to realize like, you know what? That's not the answer.
Mm.
There's more. If the weight room is your only source of getting better, you're always going to leave something on the table.
That's so true, though. It's amazing how strong that statement is because, and don't get it twisted, we love the weight room more than
Yes,
everybody else. We love it. There's so much great stuff that comes from it.
there's a
However,
ton of value.
comma, there's, yeah, oh, for sure. But however, there comes a point where if your skill and your ability to sprint, decelerate, change direction, catch a ball, throw a ball, tackle, block, whatever your skill is, dunk, there's a point where you got to go do that a lot more than you lift, right? Now, I still think lifting should always be in somebody's program, um,
100%.
but the skill needs to be there. If the skill's not there, more time in the weight room isn't going to make up for
Yeah, and like I think the biggest thing is like when people hear that, they think that we're saying like you need to get rid of the weight room. No, we're saying do
it. Right.
both. Like the issue
Both.
is like so many people only do the weight room, but they don't do the other stuff. But yet
Yeah.
no one feels like, oh, like when we say the weight room's important, we're attacking sprints, jumps, decels, change of direction, agility. But all of a sudden, when we start saying like, hey, those things are really important, well, it's like, well, what about the back squat? It's the most important thing. Like if you want to run faster, you just got to get your box squat up. You
Yeah,
need
you're
to,
right.
you don't know, you need to learn about Louis. And I'm like, bro,
Yeah.
I do know about him.
Yeah, he
And
broke my
it's,
back, but
to
but
be fair,
yeah. No,
I'd
it's
stopped
just
doing the West Side stuff at that point.
yeah, no, I mean, look, he obviously did good things and this is no shade at him. He obviously did really good things. They have world records, so
Yes,
obviously like he was a very intelligent man. But
great at
what
what
we're
he did.
saying is you have to yeah. Yeah, exactly. But you have to understand when the weight room becomes your limiting factor. And what I mean by that is, and there's a perfect example of this. I'm going to use one of my guys as the example, and he is absolutely jacked and shredded. You looked at it like when I first saw him, I'm not even kidding you. I was like, bro, you're a wrestler. Like he's so cut, he's so shredded. He literally like you look at me like, dude, you're like he could go step on a stage today, right? With zero preparation. He could go step on a stage today as a bodybuilder and crush everybody just because he's that cut. He's that physically gifted. I mean, it's insane. And he's such a great person. And he's such a hard worker. And he's like the perfect example of a person you want. Like, and I
Yeah,
mean that in every regard. He's such an amazing human being. But here's the deal: he doesn't play,
yeah,
and he doesn't play. Um, he's got good skills. Not great. Good. Not great. Physical specimen. The hardest worker on the team for sure. The hardest worker. Everybody will say that too. Doesn't play, you know? And it's just like, I feel bad for you. I love you, but I feel bad for you. But at the same time, it just goes to show like you could be the best in the weight room at times, but if your skills aren't where they need to be, unfortunately, if you're playing a sport, now if your sport is powerlifting, sure, then like whatever. But
Yeah,
that's not what we do. So,
right.
you know, so I feel bad for him, but he's such an amazing person, but yeah, it's just his skills just aren't there. And, it's not more time in the weight room. It's not more mobility. It's not more recovery. It's not, it's just get better at the sport. Be
Yeah.
better at the sport. That's it. I mean, bottom line. That's
And
no way
that's
around
something,
around it.
and this is another thing. Apparently, this is Twitter also told me I shouldn't say this anymore. But I really relate with that because that's how I was in high school. Like, I was good at some things as a wide receiver. Um,
Yeah.
I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Dude for the New Orleans Saints, their best wide receiver.
The one that plays quarterback too, or like,
No, everybody calls him a slant pass merchant.
oh no, who calls him that?
I don't know. Whatever.
Slant pass merchant. Yeah, it doesn't matter
Yeah,
regardless. Yeah.
whatever the dude is for the New Orleans Saints, who he gets a ton of receiving yards every year, but they're pretty much all from slant passes and like screen passes.
Sure. Okay. Yep.
That was basically who I was. Like sucked at
Yep.
catching the deep ball. Um, my routes were okay, but in terms of like, I had the highest back squat on the team my senior year as a 165-pound
Sure.
wide receiver, but it took me 5 to 7 steps to decelerate to run an out route. So it's like I
Mm.
accelerate for like 2 steps, and then it's like trying to decelerate so I
Decelerate.
can,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Yep.
yeah, you're probably not going to be open doing that. So like, yes, if they wanted someone who could only catch screens and run slants, I'm their guy. The
Right.
issue is they wanted a wide receiver that could do more. And so I didn't
Could do
play.
both. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like the other guys were good enough at that stuff. Like, yes, I was better. Like I had the highest back squat on the team. I was going to get more yards after the catch on a screen pass. Like once I make contact, probably wasn't going to be brought down by some random 150-pound wide receiver or cornerback in backwoods Alabama. But
Sure.
you can't call a screen pass every play.
Right.
So I wasn't that useful. But like I just thought I needed to squat more. And like no, I needed to like I mean like my gosh, like if I could have just had like the basic stuff from like XPE Sports with Tony Villani on
Yeah.
the game speed stuff, if I just had someone to tell me like, "Hey, just go practice slowing down." I probably could have actually been really good. And but yeah, like I
Yeah. It's
relate to that so much because it's like I thought like I like oh if I can just get my power clean up, if I can just get my back squat up, my deadlift up, I'll finally be the starting wide receiver. But I wouldn't have been.
right. Right. It's crazy. Yeah. Gosh, it's crazy how sometimes we think that, right? And I thought that too for the longest time. And I was an average athlete. I mean, I was I was average. You know, whatever. But that was my thought process too. Like I lived in the weight room. It was my thing. I was the strongest, had the most energy, hooting and hollering. Typically one of the strongest. Um, like in high school, I think I was like squatting 365, 385. I think I got close to 405 maybe. In college, I definitely squatted over 405. It was like 425.
Yeah,
I've done 500 several times on like a box squat.
yeah,
But that was typically like after college more than anything. It was
right.
actually really funny when I was in college. So it was funny when I was in college. I was like a 185-pound middle linebacker in high school, which is small. If
Right.
right, I felt big, but it was small. And
Yeah.
then went to college, and then I got up to like 207 as an outside linebacker, and I thought I was massive. I have pictures actually. My neck looks so thick. I
Yeah.
just look so thick, and it's like 207, right? And it's just crazy how that happens. And now here I am, fast forward the time, and I'm like 220. and I feel like small. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Yeah.
just feel smaller than when I did at like 207. Granted, I'm by far the strongest I've ever been.
Yeah.
Um, my motor is definitely the highest it's ever been. Um, it's just really interesting to like squatting 405. I mean, I just did that the other day. Like
Yeah.
that was easy. It wasn't anything crazy. My bench is like close to like 315 now, right? Like, so it's just like, okay, cool. Like I'm just so much stronger. Granted, I'm like almost 30, so like there's that. But you just mature and you do all that stuff. So it's just so funny how we think, oh, I just gotta get stronger. Just gotta get stronger. Yeah, like to an extent, you gotta get stronger. But then, more importantly, brother, you gotta be better at your skills.
Yes.
You gotta be better at your skills, and that's what's gonna get you, not anything else. It's crazy.
Yeah. And that's so. I guess here's one thing that I've kind of shifted my opinion on in the last few years, and maybe it'll shift again. I don't know. I
Yeah,
personally
yeah,
believe that there's almost an inverse relationship between how good of an athlete you are and what percentage of your time training can be spent in the weight room and expect to get better. If you're an
mm,
elite athlete, if you're Michael Jordan, yes, just adding the weight room will make you even better. Like if you watch
yes,
the Last Dance
yes,
documentary, they
yes,
talk about how those guys just started, and like if you watch what they're doing stupid stuff, man. They were just doing like
sure,
random like sets of 12 on random machines. It wasn't
sure,
like high level. They weren't doing triphasic. Like
right,
they weren't
right,
doing something out of super training. They were just hitting 10 to 12
yeah,
on some random machines. And they still got better because they're that good. They're
yeah,
phenomenal athletes. They're the
yeah,
cream of the crop. They're the top
yeah,
1% of the top 1%. So guess what? If those guys just add the weight room, they're going to get better. If
yep,
you're an average or below average human and you just do the weight room, you will get better at the weight room. And
yep,
yes, if you're an absolute Bambi, if you're an eighth grader that weighs 110 pounds, yes, getting your trap bar up will probably make you faster because you have the motor coordination of a newborn giraffe.
right, yep, exactly. Yeah, I think
Like,
that's yeah for sure. No, it's so true. So, there's times where you need to do both, and there's times where you might need one more than the other. And if one is sufficient, then you need to start working on the other, right? So, I think, just recognizing that and being like, okay, where am I at on the spectrum right now? What is my limiting factor? And what do I need to do? What do I need to apply to, help me get there? So, wrapping up here, final thoughts. One last thing that you'd like to put out, to say, to either hang your hat on. What do you got?
what you talking about? Like, um, got me in the right direction
Whatever you
here.
want. Sure, whatever you want. Whether it's ISOs, yeah, let's talk about ISOs. Last thing on ISOs. Um, Thoughts on ISOs? What do you recommend? Should people do them?
So, ISOs, if you have a lot of people with like patellar tendonitis, they're fantastic. We've gotten to the
Yep.
point where we're not really dealing with that anymore. We have some like there's two or three guys that's had it for a couple years before I got there. They're still dealing with it, but they're dealing with it like once or twice a month, not every single day. So
Yeah.
we've kind of swapped from just holding loaded ISOs to doing like an extreme slow through a full range of motion. So we'll do something like a
Mm,
lateral step down, and you're going to take 30 seconds to go through a full eccentric.
wow,
Yeah.
that's a long
Um,
time.
Yeah, but like that involve like I'm also a believer. I think lifts when you're training for performance, I think things should either be intentionally fast or intentionally slow. I don't really like that middle ground
Okay.
where there's just no intent. And yes, like even
Yeah.
if
Why
you're
is that?
pushing 90% of your one rep max, you can still try to push it as fast as possible. It's not going to move fast because it's 90%, but you can still try
Sure.
and have the intent to, okay, I can either move this at 0.3 meters per second, or I can try really hard and move it at zero point 0.4 meters per second.
Sure. Okay. Fair. How do you measure that besides VBT?
So I don't because I have 18 racks and a $0 budget. Uh, so
Yeah.
the way we get
Yeah.
intent is, which also like we've got the Titan trap bars. The Titan trap bars, once you
Okay.
get to like if you use a bumper plate, we'll use one bumper plate, then metal plates. With that setup, you can get 4 plates plus one change plate. and still put the clip on.
Sure.
So the
Gotcha.
issue is when you're training a lot of high school males, especially the football team, there's a lot of guys that need more than 405 on the bar. And especially when you got
Yeah.
people that can be in like the 550, 600 range, it's like, okay, what do we do for you? Do we just start stacking plates on top of the bar? Like, I don't know. So we actually just
Right.
swapped to doing a heavy trap bar jump, which like
Sure.
for elastic athletes, that's usually about 60% of the 1 rep max. For more muscular based athletes, that winds up being more like 70. If you're like an offensive lineman thrower, it might even be 75% of your 1 rep max. But so that's one thing we do instead, and that's an easy way to get intent. Like you
Yeah.
can't go slow and jump. So it's like
Yeah.
the
It's
nature, like the
physically
environment
impossible.
dictates. Yeah, like the nature dictates that you have to put some intent into the bar. Is it going to be as much as if I had a
Yeah.
VMAX Pro on there and an iPad in front of you so you could see your score each rep? No. Is it going to be more than if I just told you to do like a speed pull and finish through your toes? Probably.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then we
man. I
use
mean,
tempos.
no,
We
that's
have
a
a
good point.
metronome going.
That's
I'm sorry.
yep. No,
But
you're
yeah,
good. You're good.
to
Yeah,
make things
absolutely.
slow, we use a
I
tempo with
think
metronomes. And then to go fast, we jump.
yeah, there you go. So train both ends of the spectrum really slow, really fast, and the middle will kind of work itself out then.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, hey man, I want to be respectful for your time. I just want to say thank you for coming on today. Really appreciate
absolutely.
your story, getting to know where you were and where you're at, and what that looked like in between, and then how you manage 1 to 200 athletes in a 2 hour time block. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So, guys, again on the back end, hey, look, where can they follow you at, and where can they work with you online at?
Yeah, so let me make sure I've got all my handles right. So Twitter, I am at Brandon _L _Pigg. Pig has 2 G's. That's probably where I'm the most active at. That's the easiest one. Um, if you DM me, if I don't follow you, then it goes to the message request thing, so I may not see it. So if you DM me and I don't see it, just like you can literally just comment on one of my tweets and be like, "Hey, dude, check your DMs." Um,
Yeah,
outside of that, Instagram, I'm going to be honest, Instagram kind of sucks for the purposes that I use social media for. So it's just all personal content on there. I have recently started a TikTok. I've been pretty good about posting 3 times a day on there. Although I will say it's a little bit more focused towards like athletes and sport coaches than it is towards like strength
mm,
conditioning coaches who have like one or more degrees, one or more certifications and all this. So if you're
sure,
someone who's kind of like, you're the guy that just got put in charge, or the girl who got put in charge of the weight room, but you're just needing help. I put very like, okay, I'm talking to you like a normal conversation. I'm not talking science. So if you like that type stuff,
sure.
TikTok is great. That is at Brandon Pigg, still 2 G's on that, _performance. I don't really know how TikTok
Yeah,
works. I've only had it for 2 weeks. So if you do need to DM me,
sure.
just DM me on Twitter regardless.
Yeah, so you're most active on Twitter. So if you want to reach out to him, Twitter's the place to go for sure. So, guys, if again back to it, if you've got any sort of entertainment, encouragement, or educational aspect to today, if you listened, please give us a like, share, follow, comment on Instagram, on Spotify, Apple, and do us a huge solid and share this with one person that you think would benefit from it. So, especially probably a high school strength coach, somebody that's struggling, somebody that's new. So, just want to say, Brandon, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. I think this was awesome. Thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing to chat with you here in the near future, man.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. Peace. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.